Hi folks, and welcome today to the greenhouse where the sun has just come out. I've been down here a little while this morning, absolutely freezing my socks off. Almost as soon as I hit record, the sun has come out to bless us. I really hope it stays this way because it is gorgeous in here. It was suddenly starting to warm up quite dramatically. But what's on the cards today? I thought I'd give you a bit of a snapshot of what I'm sowing. This is the first weekend in March, which is always a big milestone for me. I quite often put out a video saying it's the start of the season. And that is still true. We're in a bit of a cold snap at the moment, so it is worth bearing that in mind. But I thought I'd just show you what I'm sowing and what my kind of plan is for the start of this year. I would say that there's 4 main differences between this season and my last. The first is preparation. I went back just the other day and watched my start of the season video from last year, start of March, and I was not organised, you know, I was not ready at all. I don't even know if I'd ordered most of my seeds. This year, you know, I've been thinking about gardening just so much more involved, and I'm feeling really good. I'm feeling really good about it. I've got a much better idea of where things are going out in the beds, the kind of structure, not completely there. And I've got a much more kind of set planting plan in my mind, some of which is even written down. The second is compost. So this is the first year that I've actually sprung out for a premium compost, mostly thanks to my patrons, links in the description. And normally, well, the past few years, we all know that compost has kind of gone downhill. In the past few years, peat-free compost has really been a bit of a gamble. And I've learned that the hard way by having lots of issues at the start of my season with things not growing or growing very slowly. I do over here have some things going already in a mix of different composts, and to be honest, they don't look great. This one that I've sprung for is Sylvagrow, Melcourt Sylvagrow, which is mostly kind of wood product. I wouldn't say I'm amazed by the quality, actually. This is £9 for a 6-litre bag. I think you can get it slightly cheaper elsewhere, but that's about the best I could get. Not only is it kind of not that water retentive, it's also full of weed seed, and I keep finding tiny, tiny little slug and snail eggs. And I'm not really sure if that's within their control or not, but it's not ideal. And it is a bit scary when you think that you're going to be growing tiny little seedlings in here. The texture is really nice, but like I say, it just doesn't seem to hold water that well. So I think in the future I might be adding some vermiculite in here to kind of aid with that water retention. When I plant seeds into this, what I do is I pre-wet it, and that seems to kind of help a bit. There are so many slug and snail eggs in here. Holy cow. The third and fourth changes are kind of in tandem, really. The first is that I've got a new greenhouse. So I've got loads and loads more space for all of my seedlings. I can go a bit crazy this year compared to in the past, where I was always a bit restrained, a bit cautious, never really grew too many things, and often that meant I didn't have backups when things inevitably went wrong. But the flip side to having the second greenhouse is that I now have a second allotment plot. I'm sure you've seen my videos on that. Maybe you've seen some of the beginner guide videos too. So there's that. And as well, actually, I am also growing a much wider variety of crops this year. For example, in front of me here, I've got things like this. The Christmas lima bean that was sent to me very kindly by Audrey. Real food comes dirty. Links in the description. And I've got all sorts of legumes, lots of French beans and broad beans and just all sorts of things that are going to be taking up a bit more space. And lots of other new varieties that I'm trying. I did a very recent video on some of the interesting seed varieties that I'm growing. But I thought today I would just give you a quick overview of what I'm doing. And quite often around this time of year, I get a little bit panicky, you know, a little bit fraught, a bit rushed. And this year I'm feeling a lot more kind of calm, on top of things. And so I'm going to be sowing some of these today, not all of them, you know, it's not a rush. I'm going to be doing a kind of mix, and hopefully I just won't run out of seed trays. But let's talk a little bit about some of the varieties and what I'm getting going at the start of March. This first tray that I'm going to do is kind of a lot of brassicas. So I've got here some green sprouting Calabrese, absolutely terrified to see how that comes out. 2 kinds of Brussels sprouts and celeriac as well, which I don't think is a brassica, but will kind of suit this, I think. I do already have a huge number of brassicas on the go, lots of kind of summer cabbages. So As tempting as it is for me to go a little bit crazy and plant some more cabbages, I think it's best to wait another few weeks before I try a succession of those. One thing I am trying to work on as well, and something that I've always been quite bad at, is kind of speed sowing. You know, just getting a little bit less precious, a little bit faster. It's much easier when you've got a big quantity of stuff and you've got one of these trays and you can just kind of chuck it all in, spread it out, flatten it, and then you just dib. And I'm going to try and get better at using 2 fingers. Just things that make it a little bit quicker, a little bit easier. In particular, I've been really shocked when I see some people doing this. Steve, Green Side Up in particular, you see him sow seeds and it's like, what? You're a maniac, how have you done that so quickly? So I've just popped my labels in, and the thought behind this one is that it's not really a successional, none of these are successional crop. We've got sprouting broccoli, Brussels sprouts, the celeriac, once again, a long season crop that doesn't really, it's giant Prague, this one by the way. And then we've got Red Bull and Evesham for the sprouts. And I've just realised the one that's missing from here is my purple sprouting broccoli. Is it quite early for purple sprouting broccoli? Yes, it is. No one else normally sows purple sprouting broccoli so early, but I've found that if you do it this time of year, you can keep it on for quite a long time in pots and then plant it out in May, and you will get some amazing plants. But they might take up the space of other things. A lot of the time people put their sprouting broccoli in much later, but I've got the space in the tray here. I'm trying to think what else would go in that doesn't really, you know, that you don't need any successional planting for. I do quite like to just keep the trays fairly organised, you know, rather than mix something like this with maybe successional lettuce that you'd have to come in and pop things out of. So let's put some purple sprouting in. So a tiny bit of space left in the seed tray, and I found this as well, which is some purple kale. Not generally the biggest fan of kale, but we're gonna give it another go. Maybe a little early for this one as well, but I'm sure it should be okay undercover. And I forgot to mention, this green sprouting Calabrese is one of the out-of-date seeds that was 9p, so I've gone a bit thicker in those, and I'm going to be sowing a few other of the 9p seeds today. I'll link the video up here where I show you all the seeds that I got for 9p. I'll tell you one thing, I'm very appreciative to Past JB for actually being on top of my seed orders, you know, like it's really refreshing to just be able to open up my seed box and know that the things that I want to plant are going to be in there. For example, this purple sprouting broccoli is fresh seed that I bought this year. I don't remember buying it, it was a few months ago when I actually put in some time and did my seed order, and it's just so refreshing not opening my seed box and going, wait a minute, I haven't got the seed that I wanted. That was one of my tips on the Potty Mouth Garden Club live streams. Links in the description. You know, around December, I always think kind of end of December, beginning of the new year, is a really good time to do a seed stock take and properly go through your seed box, have a think, you know, is there anything missing? And another thing I do is try and make notes when I finally finish a seed packet. There's a lot of seed packets, you know, you get hundreds and hundreds of seeds in there and you think it's just always there, and it's really easy to forget that actually you did finish the packet. So when I do finish a pack of something like purple sprouting broccoli, I always just make a note and know that I need to order it when I do my seed stock take. I think it's probably good practice to do that more than once a year as well and have a think throughout the year. But you know, doing it once is better than not doing it at all, and generally speaking, it's not something I was in the practice of doing when I should have been. So if you haven't done your seed stock take yet, it really is time to get a move on. I always try to say, you know, don't rush, there's always time in the season, but in terms of buying seeds, I think it is definitely time to get a little bit organised. Don't worry, if you can't grow under cover, a lot of this can still go in a good month time. I did not think that I would be saying today that it's actually getting too warm. It's been freezing today. So once again, just a reminder, it's fine to get things like this, which are all very cold hardy, fine to get these on the go, but don't panic about anything that's tender, especially if you don't have fleece or a greenhouse or somewhere that you can grow things under cover. Oh, but just look at that. Look at that. Beautiful sight. I think that sowing should be a joyful experience, and for me in the past often it hasn't been. There's a bloody snail in here, get out. Often in the past for me it hasn't been an enjoyable experience. It's been a last minute rush. I've been panicking, I've been stressing, you know, oh, I've got to get this in and this in and this in. And you know, if you're little and often, which I know isn't always easy, you know, I always normally had a reason for being stressed and being behind, but if you can do little and often, it just works out so much easier. Today is a Sunday, so I've got what feels like all the time in the world, but if I only had a couple of hours, you know, I'd sow what I could and then come back tomorrow, even if I've only got half an hour. Sowing should be a nice kind of quick, little easy job that fills you with joy and excitement at the thought of how these tiny little seeds are going to grow into full-sized big plants, and they're going to give you nutrition and sustenance when they're ready for harvest. I love doing seeds if I'm in the right frame of mind and it's not a rush. It really does feel like the allotment is starting to be my happy place, and it is just wonderful. You know, my mentality towards gardening has definitely changed a bit over the seasons as I've become more experienced and kind of learn how to better adapt my mentality more than anything. But this tray is going to be for some beans. I've got a selection here, dwarf French Orinoco bean. This is one from the 9p seed packet. I've got climbing French bean, cobra, Christmas lima bean and Kalima bean, and I'm going to just maybe do a few trays and see how they go. With the French beans, it's my first time growing these, and I understand they're not frost hardy, and you really want a bit of a succession sowing with these. They're not kind of heavy croppers that will go all season. So I want to hold some of the seeds back, and that's a good idea to do even if you're not succession sowing, because you're starting them quite early. So I've got half a tray of the French Orinoco, and then I'm going to have half a tray here of the French Cobra, which is meant to be really nice. And then I'm going to kind of give the Lima beans their own little pots, just because there's not many of those. And then maybe we'll do some of the Kalima beans a little bit later on. But this is just, once again, me trying to be a bit more laid back, try and get into the habit of actually doing some succession sowing and just enjoying the process while I go. I cannot get into this seed packet. Come on. In the past, I think I would have been in a real rush and probably just sowed all of these at once and then gone, oh, now I've got none for succession sowing, and you know, if they got hit by frost or something like that, it's a really easy beginner mistake to make. You'd end up with no harvest whatsoever. These beans are really cool, these French Cobra. I feel like sweets, like they sort of look like candy, you know, like I should be able to just eat these and snack on them. There we have it, the Orinoco and the Cobra. It's very exciting trying some new varieties. I would also sometimes think about just double sowing these just for kind of space efficiency, but because these aren't frost hardy, they're going to be in these little modules a while longer than some other things might be. You know, if you plant a couple in a module, that's fine if you can get them out nice and quick into nice big pots or just straight into the ground, they'll be fine. But these are going to be probably hanging around in these modules for a little while, so we just want to make sure they've got lots of space and they're not going to be competing with each other too much. Oh, it's so good. I'm so excited. And I mentioned that I have a Patreon earlier, and I just want to give an extra special thank you to all of my patrons: Tony C. Smith, Michael Ryan, Bill Den, and Louise Morris. Thank you ever so much for your support. And if you want to find out more about the Patreon, links in the description. Go and have a little look at some of the things that I share behind the scenes. Something weird just fell on the seed tray. I thought it was a bug. It's not. Generally speaking, I'm really happy with what I've got planted so far. There's a few more things on the to-do list. I want to get some flowers in, definitely, and my early peas. I've been a bit late with those, but still plenty of time, I'm sure. I want to try the gutter peas again. Last year, I accidentally rotted them all. They didn't have any drainage and they were too wet. There's so much other stuff that I could show you that I've been up to on the allotments, but I think we've run out of time. Thank you ever so much for watching. I'll put a few more videos on screen now that you might be interested in watching, things that I've mentioned throughout this video, and hopefully I'll see you again next time.